Before I develop further costs, let me just say this. The level of accuracy of a preliminary cost estimate is adequate and acceptable for a decision-making body to review a cost comparison. I say that it's an industry standard, it's an accepted industry standard to utilize the preliminary cost estimate. Well, what's consistent about that cost is the unit prices that Damien had used for the building are consistent for renovation and for new construction, typical of this area. The unit prices that I have used for the site work are also consistent for unit prices of this area. The distinguishable features of each site are also identified in a preliminary cost estimate. What is not identified? I call it the temptation factor. Dr. Rubies has another term for it, but any material changes, if you want to discuss, necessities and needs are two different things. Like Pareto's principle, work expands to fill the time. Well, it's similar. Work expands to fill the space. You have a larger site, and you might be tempted to use a few more of those acres. For example, the disturbed area for the west site is about 2 acres. The disturbed area for the summit site, and I'm going to be generous, is about 5 acres. You're going to affect improvements on 5 acres on one site only because of those unique characteristics, and you're going to affect change on the west site about 2 acres. You simply can't do as much in 2 acres as you can in 5 acres. The preliminary cost basis to make a decision on a comparative analysis is an acceptable level per industry standards. The Association for the Advancement of Cost Engineers, ANSI, American National Institute of Standards, publication Z94 talks about it. They call it a level 3 or level 4 estimate. We call it a preliminary estimate. Let me continue now with some of those preliminary costs. Recall there's a tiered topography at Summit. It's possible we're going to need retaining walls. We needed retaining walls for the middle school site, for example. 300 linear feet of retaining wall, average 5 feet high, 1,500 square feet at $100 a square foot is $150,000. That's $150,000 we can't see at the west site. Stream relocation, although we think it's remote, once you get FEMA involved and the Army Corps of Engineers involved and any jurisdictional determination of wetlands, you can't predict with certainty that in fact is not going to be the case. However, I still say that stream is remote away, that we don't see an impact except in one area. Erosion control. We're going to have to protect those stream banks during construction. We don't have stream banks to protect at west. And finally, piping. There's about 2,000 linear feet of piping at the Summit site, and it ranges from 8 inches in diameter to 15 inches in diameter. They made an attempt to take that drainage around the school from the upper soccer field. Let's just say there's 2,000 linear feet of pipe, a rough number of $50 a linear foot. That's $100,000. The conveyance pipe you need for west, if we put some type of seepage bed just below the building into the athletic field, it's about 400 feet to Kershaw. So given the benefit of the doubt, say 500 feet of pipe versus 2,000 feet of pipe. And so the differences are significant because the sites are significantly different, and the characteristics of each site are significantly different. And that is how we pretty much came up with around a $2 million figure with those uncertainties versus west at about a $500,000 site cost, and that does not include demolition. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you.
Elizabeth, how are we doing? Thank you. Yeah, please. If the board were to select the west site. I know there's a great deal of concern regarding construction while children are attending the current facility. Damian Spar is going to discuss with you the staging issue of a construction project at that site. Obviously, at the Summit site, there is no issue because the children would not be there. So this is designed to answer the west site.
Good evening. I will attempt to be very brief, and I want to first state that the reason that I've been asked to have a look at this issue is, one, because Reynolds has to plan for this around every project, whether it's an open field project and you can still have concerns with people getting on the site, or it's an occupied phased renovation, which Wes sets up almost the simplest model for. The other reason that I now have a little bit better ability to speak to this is that I've got an 8-year-old second grade son, and I think I share the same concerns that you would if my son's elementary school were being looked at for this type of renovation. I think about it as a parent. So I'm hoping that as we discuss what's happening here, that you understand one of the ways that I'm looking at that. Yes, absolutely. How about now? Is that better? No?
It's on your mic.
How about? Oh, okay. How's this? Okay. That'll help. I'm sorry. So, to recap very briefly, I have an 8-year-old son, so I understand a lot of your thoughts. Not all of them. I'm not in your identical situation, but we understand. Take those into consideration. I'm very rarely told to talk up, but I will here. So, I was asked to look at how we would handle a renovation at Wes. First of all, many of you have probably been looking at the renovation here at the middle school. Complicated, many phases. This is more than twice the size of what we're talking about at Wes. Also, another significantly different factor. At Wes, we have the ability to isolate the work. If you have the ability to isolate the work in a phased renovation, then you have something that can work very well. The other things that we take into account are, how do we minimize what's going on that site? And we do that by taking some of it and moving it away from Wes and allowing contractor offices, parking, and materials to be at the Summit site. And we also limit, and you'll see in a moment, our ingress and egress from the site and how contractors access the site. If I can get the next slide. Great. I got one, thank you. Now, the way that we thought about this, again, was isolation. This new building area here is a little bit larger than the footprint that I think was shown, because we needed to keep an area over here where we could get around the back of the building. The idea is that we leave pickup and drop off the way that they are and don't change things around. Changing things around leads to different patterns of activity and can cause concerns. If we use the front by Providence Road as our primary ingress, we are able to bring things around to the back and bring them out until we start building the new building and working from the back out to the front. There will be times then that we'll need to get it back around to this work and lay down area and maybe not be able to turn around and come out. Then by scheduled, really by appointment is the way you should think about it, as in it's not recess, it's not pick up and drop off, and there aren't kids out.